And I'm going to record as. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Morning Grace with Rev Carolyn and Reverend Dawn Simpson. We are so thrilled to be back in the flow of our monthly Sunday Morning Grace and spending sacred time with you. So as always, let's open up our bodies. And notice me uncrossing my legs.
Yeah, me too.
And just open up your body as much as you can. You know, we tend to close in our hearts with leaning forward or trying, whether it's we're protecting our physical hearts. Some of you out there know that I just had to have my pacemaker replaced. So I am protecting my physical heart right now. But we oftentimes are protecting our emotional heart, our energetic heart. So, stretch out your shoulders a little bit before we even close our eyes, as much as is comfortable for you. And just feel that energy and the emotion open in front of our chests. And now pull your shoulders more deliberately in, consciously in, as if you're trying to protect your chest. Maybe even put your hands in front of your heart. And kind of feel the back of your heart opening up. And then again, open up your shoulders. And just feel how the energy moves in our bodies at every level, right? So we've just done some very simple stretching to open up the energy in our back behind our heart and in our chest in front of our heart. And as we spoke, or as I spoke the words and you guys listened, you're also moving the energy in our hearts that blocks our hearts. So just breathe into that new awareness and know that our hearts are barometers. And, we tend to lock in on things at a level we aren't always aware of. You just take a moment and think about someone you admire. We're going to be talking about icons and legends and people we admire. Just bring into your mind, maybe it's going to be a little flash or an image, someone who you admire. And notice when you think of that person, how your heart expands. That space that you just opened up gets warm, feels good. And now just for a moment, I invite you to think about somebody you don't admire, or perhaps is the perfect example of, I do not ever want to be like that person. And see what happens to your heart when you think about that. Perhaps it gets a little heavy or feels dark, closes in a little bit. Maybe your heart races a little bit. Just notice that contrast. Oftentimes we are drawn to people and we don't even know why. Sometimes we're drawn to learn from them, and sometimes we're drawn to be like them. I guess another version of learn like them, but it's not a life lesson learning. And with that very rich thought roaming around in your brain, I invite you to come back to this time in this space and open your eyes. Welcome, Dawn.
Rich. Yes.
I know.
It was so rich. That was so palpable. That was wonderful. And I invite you to do that as often as you need to, want to, because you know what? It can change. People you admire can change. People you don't want to be like can change. Depends on where you are in your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It was powerful.
Just as powerful to realize who you don't want to be like. Because, we have these our bodies are just such great filters of energy. And oftentimes we just say, well, I don't like that person. And that's true. And, and that's good. And sometimes it is enough. There's just You don't like that person, and that's okay. But the next question I invite you to say is, why? Is there a judgment with you and that person that you can unpack maybe a little bit of where you're judging people? Is there what you're hiding inside? Is there an energy from your family? I never want to be like that person when I grow up, which oftentimes will push us into the extreme, right? Like if money, I'll just give an example in my own family that, there's strings attached with money. There's a it's not free. There's a giving and a taking kind of involved versus a giving and a giving. And I became very careless with my money because I didn't want to be attached to a string. And that was pretty dysfunctional on my part, going to that other end of the pendulum. So learning what that I don't like that is, or why I don't want to be like that person, is just as powerful for us to really step into us, who we are. Now I can give without expectations, but with boundaries. Huge, absolutely huge.
That is huge. And, you've gone into imbalance to discover and realign yourself into balance. And that, that's not for the faint, right? That's not easy to come back from. No. Doing your inner work is not for the weak. And I'm not saying people are weak, but it's not easy to do that. And, because you were able to recognize that, you recognized that in yourself, that when you did this, you felt this, and realized that's not good to feel that way. I speak this way and yet I'm feeling the opposite. Right. So, it's powerful alone to recognize where you feel that you're out of balance.
Balance is
to change it.
Yeah, and change it. And I think that's what's so beautiful and rich about this topic, is that we can look at, what's the value, and why are you drawn to this? Now you came up with some great ones, because as always, you and I were chatting before we got on here. So, I'd love for you to share with everyone, who came to you like that when you were thinking about people you admire.
Yeah, well, when we, realized what our topic was, I immediately go into, and this is every time we, talk about our topic, I sit down right away and I just kind of go inward and kind of find my path, right? What's coming to me to share with our audience. And right away, it was Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer. And they both have passed, but they both have done wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things in this world. Many of you have heard of them, and there may be some of you who haven't. Maybe you're new to this type of things. But Louise Hay, she died when she was 90. I mean, she lived a full life. She was born and her mother was poor. Her stepfather was abusive. On her 16th birthday, she gave birth and gave her child up for adoption. She went on and held groups and things for people with AIDS. And this is when AIDS first came out, and it was, you can imagine how it was accepted and treated, right? But she right away had stepped in with that. She had written the book called You Can Heal Your Life, which many people have come forth and told her that book literally saved their lives. They were on death's door, in their mind. That book alone sold 50 million copies. 50 million copies. I can't even imagine what that looks like in books, you know? So that's 50 million sold. Then you think about how many people, so I bought one of them, right? So then I sold it to you, but that they're not counting that, right? That's like, so you know what I mean? So you know there's more than 50, and it was in 30 different languages. So it's people all over the globe who, you know, listened and watched and read that book and have been changed. So you just think of her alone, where, you know, she had such a rough beginning. You know, her foundation wasn't a positive one. She wasn't raised on positive vibrations where, you know, where she ended up going out to do wonderful things in the world. She was raised in awful circumstances and some really harsh challenges. And, you know, like you were saying, she realized where her imbalance was, right? Maybe she had thoughts that, you know, because her stepfather was abusive and had gotten raped, you know, and pregnant. And so, you know, some people might, you know, have some bad feelings toward men or stepfather, you know what I mean? Because of their, but she, you know, went on and did beautiful things and led a beautiful life. Wayne Dyer, same thing, you know, awful beginning, you know, was put into an orphanage with his brothers, and his father literally walked away from their family, his wife and 3 young children. He was in an orphanage, you know. He ended up being back with his mother and everything, but, you know, he went through cancer. Like, he just went through so many things. He went on to write, I couldn't even count. I couldn't even count, over 60 books, like so many books. And the same thing, people have reported that his books have, you know, saved their lives. So, you know, those are 2 key people that I admire and that inspire me, that I learned a lot from.
Yeah, and they're so powerful. You know, I will find myself grabbing Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life book when I'm in a coaching session, because somebody will say, I'm feeling such and such. I'm like, well, let's go to the Bible, so to speak, and, you know, grab this book and see what she has to say. And it might resonate, it might not, but it kind of gives us a voice or a place to start and step into. And I think that, you know, these are change makers, right? No matter what their beginning, you know, they have made a difference in the world by being authentic, by stepping into themselves. And I think that feels so powerful for me. You know, we all have these masks that we wear, right? I mean, here we are recording in October, stepping towards Halloween. And and not only is there the, you know, dress up for Halloween version, there's the daily mask that we can all get behind or be behind, and sometimes not even realize that we're wearing it. And these people, you know, like Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer, and you know, I think about, you know, my mentor Alan Davidson. He had a tough upbringing, and, you know, but he stepped into who he was, and was quite almost pushy about who he was. You know, and the first time I met him, I went, oh, that's a little bit much. But then I realized there's the judge again, right? He's a little bit too much because I wasn't being enough. And I recognize that energy of, he is so himself because he was a gregarious, this is what you get. And I was still hiding the light inside. You guys recognize that, right? You know, everybody's got a little bit of that, what's the parable, light under the bushel basket thing, right? So we've all got that. And recognizing I got that, I am triggered by him because of something. So let me get curious. What is it that I love about him? And what is it that makes me uncomfortable? And why? Yeah. And then understanding, I'm like, oh, I get it, because he is who he is. He's authentic. And I'm not quite there yet. I mean, I was obviously there, but I wasn't, you know, there was a piece of me that I wasn't being vulnerable. I wasn't being open. I wasn't completely sharing. whether it was stuff from my growing up or how I was feeling now. We all like to try and pretend we're perfect, but we're not. We've all had challenges. We've all had doubts. We've all made mistakes. And I think that's what makes an icon. It's the hero's journey. You run into a problem and you overcome it. You step into your own brilliance and make a difference in the world. You shine your own light. You and I both have our candles. We shine our lights.
Yes. Yep. And some of the things that you can like, and I'll use you as an example. When you first met Alan, you were like, well, this dude, he is just like over the top. He's very out there. But he can be I don't know. He's out there, but he can pull you in because he's so
tender heart. Yeah.
Yes. And I think a piece of that, and just using him as an example for how people can feel and why they might feel certain ways, is because they're, and may I use the word, jealous that this man is out there being who he is and probably getting judged millions of times a day, right? Because he was so, so himself and didn't care,
right.
Didn't care what anybody thought about how he was, right? Being himself and how he showed up in the world. But I think that when people go, oh, that's too much for me, but is it,
Yeah,
it's him being him, and where it allow it to speak to you in the way of, where am I not being myself? So, I mean, I wouldn't come out, I would never be that big, right? He was big, right? Yeah, he was big, right? So we could say he's a size 10, maybe you're a size 8, right? And so, but are you showing up in the world as a size 6?
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
So, you look at, okay, so you think, okay, you're a size 8 and you're showing up in the world as a size 6. When you go home, you put your key in the door, you open the door, you come home, you take all your stuff off. You're your size 8, right? You just took everything off. Your everything, your hair piece, your makeup, your clothes, your jewelry, whatever, right? And I'm not saying those are masks. They're not. But for some people they can be, right? For some people they can be. But what are you taking off that makes you actually put on who you are? So even though you're putting things on, you're actually taking size off, 2 sizes off, right? So you're really an 8, but you're putting all this stuff on to, you're showing up less than who you really are, right? If that makes sense.
Behind that,
you're hiding. Yes, you're hiding, and you're not allowing yourself in
your light.
Yes, you're not allowing yourself, because you feel you're going to be judged, because society has set this mold that if you're not going to be judged, you need to look like this, act like this, work in this field, talk like this, don't talk like this. So we've been, programmed to believe that we need to fit in that mold. And so who we really are at our 8 doesn't fit that mold. But if we make a few tweaks, we can show up as a 6 and we can fit better in that mold. So we always go out and show up as a 6. But at the end of the day, you're not, like you said, you're not shining your light. Your light is dimmed. You're a bright 8, right? You're going out, you're as a bright 6, maybe, right? But you're really, you're really dimming.
Just still turned down though.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and you feel it. So you feel it when you're judging that person who feels like, oh my God, they're too much. What's making you judge them? A piece of you could be jealous that they don't care. They don't care that they're showing up as their full 10. You wish you could do that.
Right.
And so it's, We really do. We didn't come here to be to be masked. We didn't come here to not shine our light.
Right.
Things have happened in our life that made it dim, right? All of
Yeah.
these people that we named had been through some stuff, and that would dim your light.
And that'll dim your light, and it's always a choice. You know, one of the other people that I really admire is my grandfather. You know, he's an upbringing a little bit similar to Wayne Dyer, where he went into an orphanage, I think at about 8 years old. And by 13, he had run away so many times that they stopped looking for him.
Oh.
And done the streets of Brooklyn for I think it was almost 2 years, if memory serves me. And at 14, he enlisted in the Army, World War I. They didn't have papers and cards then, so they couldn't prove he wasn't 16. And, you know, he went through the service and he was always so grateful. He met my grandmother, and he was one of the kindest, most giving, most generous men I have ever met. He was always positive. I got my silver lining gene from watching this man, and I'm so grateful for it. But, you know, anytime, you know, if there was something that was negative, he would just say, well, you know, that's not important. Let's not talk about that.
Wow.
You know, like we would ask him stories about the orphanage, and, you know, when it was a Catholic Charities, when all of the abuse stuff came out, we would ask him, and he said, you know, there's just some things that you don't want to put the energy into talking about. It was as simple as that. It had no impact on him, and he didn't want to put anything into it. He didn't want to feed it, so to speak. And he'd focus on what was positive, and the love, and the building the family, and the importance of things that he didn't get. So that's the way he switched things around. Like, he didn't get a full education. He sent 6 kids to college back in the 50s. You know, so I mean, and that's the energy of, you know, that I want to model myself after, is I want to be bright. So, you know, and there's ways that we can look at all of the people around us and learn those things, right? It's like I can, you know, see what triggered me with Alan, and I can see what inspired me with my grandfather, to learn and expand and become more me. And that's what's fun about noticing these and being more aware, right? Like, why do you love that? Why do you not love that? What is it that makes you uncomfortable about a certain person or a movie?
Right. So it's about, you know, our message here today is really about, so who do you admire and why? And who don't you want to be like and why? You know, what do they do that, you know, just makes you cringe and makes you think, you know, how could they be or act or say, whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
That just, you know, as we were doing in the beginning, you know, bringing our chest in and kind of protecting our hearts, right?
Yeah.
What is making you cringe when you see or hear whatever near that person? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
And the other way around, you know, when you see somebody that, you know, you love, and you just kind of like sit a little different, and you just kind of, you know, your heart is open to receive more of what they have and what they're offering you, right? And it could be a character that is fictional, you know, made up character, but there's something about them that they are, you know, portraying, the mask that they're wearing, the, you know, the character that they're in, the message that they're bringing through their character. What is it that you like? What is it that inspires you? What are you learning from them, from their story? What are you learning from their behavior? What are you learning from their light? What are you learning from what they're trying to teach?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's, and every day we can take this lesson and understanding out into our day.
Absolutely.
That we do.
My favorite characters is this girl right here.
An
icon for me. And, you know, she is really the divine feminine, which is what I strive to step into more and more every day. You know, being kind and caring and loving and supporting and developing friendships and having compassion. But yet, when she's pushed past that line of her beliefs, she's a warrior. You know, she steps right into that. I call it the mama bear, right? So she steps right into, you can't cross me. I'm going to protect those I love. And, you know, that energy of that discernment and not stepping straight into fight the back, you know, the fighting. Because, you know, living so many years and working in corporate, it's easy to just push back energetically. Like you're crossing a boundary, instead of trying to understand what's the reason, you know, and that's one of the energies that I've been trying to emulate with this is, what's the reason that they're pushing? Is there something that I can do to create collaboration instead of being in combat with them? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. But giving that opportunity rather than automatically pushing back, right? So it's just been fun for me to really kind of step into this energy, this cloak, so to speak, of Wonder Woman and think, all right, can I ask? Can I take a moment and understand what's driving the other person? Maybe they've got a deadline and they just don't know how to deal with it. And that way they're dumping stuff off.
Right, that's a thing. We don't understand where people are at. We just see the results of their inner frustrations and their inner challenges. We're not, you know, we don't see why somebody cut us off on the road. You know what I mean? Somebody you don't even know is, you know, why? Because, you know, who knows? Maybe they just got a call from the hospital that their mother is not doing well, and they can't even think. They're just driving they're focused on getting to the hospital, and they're just making poor decisions on the road. They're not out to get you. They're not trying to cut you off. They're just trying to get to their mother who, you know, was in the hospital, and they're concerned. So, you know, it's just, you know, again, this is an invitation to, and it does really invite you to do more of your inner work. Like you said, Carol, in the beginning, you know, when you notice somebody's really a lot or too much the other way, right? What's being triggered inside of you? You know, is it a memory of your childhood? Is it, you know, just a reflection of something that you really despise and that, you know, something you don't want to be like? So again, it's really a big invitation here, you know, more so than any other time. I'm finding in these times that I'm finding people are less compassionate in this world. On social media, you know, I'm just shocked at the lack of compassion that people have had lately because of the, you know, the state of the world right now. And so this is really an invitation to spending more time in that, to bring back our compassion for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And keep those boundaries, you know, because sometimes you do have to say no, thank you. But if no thank you or no, not even thank you, is your go-to energy when you feel like somebody's wronging you, and that wronging you can be a really big bucket, then you know, we're missing out on opportunities. We're missing out on potential relationships. We're missing out on our own growth because we're not learning and expanding and filtering, right? It's like we've got a wall instead of something that's porous where information can come in, or maybe it's like a 2-layer thing, right? You can let something in the first layer, but you can always put down the second one if you need to. You know, envision it however it works for you. But if we immediately close that gate or that wall, then we miss out on so much richness in the world. Because the differences are what makes us fun. We're all unique. Thank God we're all unique.
Yeah.
How boring would the world be if we were all the same? Yeah.
Boring.
Very boring. And and that I will admit is a trigger for me. The people who want everybody to be the same, that I have a judgment that I work on every time I read something on social media or in the news, that why would you want to have everybody conform? I'm still working on that one. That's a hard one for me.
Yeah.
That why we're all so bright, that we're all so interesting.
But that's not how we're designed. We're not all designed to conform. So to force conformity is just, it's not going to work. So
no, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we truly are unique. There are even twins, even identical twins have differences.
Yeah.
They
have their own brain.
They have their own environmental things, and the ways, and it does shift their DNA, the way they're exposed to things. And yes, of course, they've got a lot in common, but having this lump of we're all the same isn't thriving in the world. So, and look at the change makers, or look at the quiet ones. Sometimes
they're not feeling quiet inside.
No,
they're not.
No. And what can you do to support that? Maybe here's a good one. Maybe you are a legend to someone else and you don't even know it. Because you model whatever it is. Whenever I think about you, Dawn, and I always use you as my example of like a really strong, nurturing mama bear energy. Like whenever we're in something, I'm like, oh, my friend Dawn, because you have that. You care for your family. You're a good model. You're the center that holds everybody. You're the glue. And I'm willing to bet there's a lot more people than me who see you as that and who strive to be a little bit more of that, perhaps in their families, because they see you're just like, you're unshakable in that role. Nobody can knock you off. And it's beautiful. So think about all the times that there's other people out there that are seeing something in us. And by the way, thank you for being you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. That just, I don't want to cry. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. But there's like me, I mentioned my heart. One of the times after I think I got my first pacemaker, one of my bosses who I really admired, when I came back into the office, I had to take some time off, but when I was safe for me to go back into the office, he said, I admire you so much, because, I was a single mom I wasn't, it must've been the second pacemaker. I was a single mom at the time. And it's like, you've just done so much and you go through it with grace. And I'm like, what? So it was seeing myself through somebody else's eyes. And I'm just thinking, I'm surviving, I'm moving forward. But I didn't acknowledge I'm moving forward with grace.
Carolyn, and I truly second that. I like you, I think of you in so many examples, so many times in my life, and I say, wow, look what I could never do the things Carolyn has done, moving, lifting, everything up and moving your location away from everything that you've known for so many years, your family, your friends, your work, everything that you've created, your soul was calling you to a new location, a new vibration, a new state, a new part of the country, and you followed it. And has it been easy? No. Have you had your moments? Yes, of course. But you're doing it with grace. And I second that, boss. I truly do. You are really living this new life that you've created, the soul call that you've had pulling on you for so long that, but the time was right. The time wasn't right before then, for all kinds of reasons. But that soul call didn't stop, and you didn't stop listening. You always heard it. You always listened to it. And you knew it was coming, and here you are. You did it, and you did do it with grace, and you're by yourself and going through all kinds of things by yourself. And I truly, truly, truly honor you. And sometimes I say I want to be like Carolyn when I grow up, in that way. And so yeah, you are so strong, and I do second that boss that you had. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for that. And I think we oftentimes don't give ourselves enough credit for things like that, right? Like, it's part of my personality is to persevere with grace as much as and I've recently started adding the word ease because I'd like it to be easier, so ease and grace, that's my new mantra. But to have it mirrored back and to realize that whether we know it or not, we are a model for other people. We're a model for our families. We're a model for our communities as teachers and coaches and as ministers. This community here, we're a model for other people. And that as we are more authentic, because that's one of the issues that I struggled with in the beginning of, when I was younger, it was not safe to be me. So for me, as I become more and more authentic, my prayer is that other people around me have the courage, like Alan did. Alan impacted me to be more me. And I really hope and pray that as I'm more me in my own way of being me, that other people are going to feel safer in being them and being, and shining their own unique light out into the world. And I'm getting choked up. And because that's how we change the world. That's how we each become icons and legends and make a difference, because we each have that own in our hearts. We can do it. We are it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I teach, and some of the things that I teach is that when you shine your light, and however you do that, wherever you show up in the world, that's you shining your light. You are then allowing others to shine theirs. When you step into a room and you start you start the vibe, you're just kind of like chill, and don't you find that other people open up to you and they're like, yeah, let's do this. But if you showed up angry and kind of closed off, then you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the vibe too, So when you're shining your light, you're enabling and allowing other people to shine theirs and to show up, as they truly are.
Absolutely. Just to be the model. That's it. And I think sometimes we don't see ourselves in that way. And, I guess to kind of wrap up, the one point that I'd love to leave people with is, what are you modeling? And are you modeling yourself? Or are you modeling the conditioning and the expectations of others? And we're all works in progress, right? So there's going to be moments that we don't feel like we're really modeling what we feel inside, but for whatever reason we need to fit into a different category for a little bit. But it's the awareness, doing it with awareness versus unconscious or just rote. And it's powerful. Let's go back to our journals. We haven't mentioned them yet in this show. We always do that.
Yeah.
Get the journal out, not write down, how am I feeling today? Am I being me? Am I 80% me? And then acknowledge it. Maybe today you don't have a lot of energy to engage. Today might be nurturing you, and that's okay, because that's part of you too.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
notice.
journaling is huge. Journaling is huge. And I know we've said this over and over, but for those of you who this may be your first time that you just found us and you're just listening to us for the first time, you know, we talk about and we do journal very regularly. And it's some days, you know what I do sometimes? I'll take my journal out every day. When I get up in the morning, that's what I do. I go for my journal. So some days I feel the need to write, and some days I feel the need to read what I've written, because you don't just write and then forget. You go back and you read and, you know, and, you know, review what amazing wisdom is on those pages. So some days I write, some days I read and catch up and remember what I wrote. So
Beautiful.
yeah, we push journaling.
Yes, we do. And that's one of the few times in life I can feel good about pushing.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. This has been just so amazing.
Yeah. As always.
As always. Yes. So shall we close with our tenets?
We shall. I open my heart with deep gratitude and intend today to master my spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical energies.
I am dedicated to my spiritual practice. I surrender to my soul's purpose through sacred prayer. I own my guidance.
I live in partnership with my angels. I serve with a loving heart. I am compassionate in every moment.
I trust it's all good. I allow immediate forgiveness. I honor my truth.
I listen to the spiritual messages within my physical body. I express myself creatively. I am one with Mother Earth. And so it is.
And so it is. Beautiful. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Dawn, as always. It's always such a rich and fun conversation. And bless be everybody. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you next time. Be well. Bye for now.